So, let's see if I can, that work better? Maybe, maybe. So, collage is an art form where you take bits of things that don't belong together and usually glue them all together to make a new piece of art. It was popular in the early part of the 20th century, or yeah, I think so. Dadaist people loved it. There's Max Ernst, who would cut up engravings printed in magazines and books, and he would put a fish head on top of a priest and put a sword instead of a cross. And I'm not describing it very well. It was much more surreal than that. And then frame them and make a piece of art that it didn't involve him drawing a single line. All he had was a pair of scissors and some glue. And other people did it with things that were completely different, pieces of fabric, theater tickets, ribbon, and created this a piece. Usually it was non-representational, or often it was non-representational. My father did it quite a bit, and I think that's what got me interested in collage in the first place. I tried to find images of his collage work, but I couldn't find them in the usual spots, so you'll just have to take my word for it. So here's one of the reasons why I do it is because I don't want to say I'm lazy. I just don't know which one of the 10 drawings I did I want to frame, which is the best. So I just take all 10, put them together in one big frame and call it a day. And they're overlapping usually. Sometimes they're not. Anyway, here's some examples of some of the pieces I have in my hallway. For some reason, the camera on this iPad wasn't able to focus, but this is a very large framed piece, maybe 4.5 feet by 3.5 feet or bigger, maybe. And what I have is in the center area, I have the actual pieces of art that I created with here's the one that's in focus, with my pen and ink and hand. And here's the tattoo that I did for someone. It's a picture of him with his left teat showing. There's maps I've made, there's invitations I've designed, coats of arms I made. That's in the center. These are the finished pieces on the center. Around the outside, where the mat is, this picture had a large mat on the outside. So I used that to contain the pencil or pen and ink drawings I did in coming up with the correct, the design that went into the thing. So the work is out here, the sketches are out here, and then the finished piece is in the middle. And that way, by looking at this, you can say, oh, Pierre is so clever with all sorts of things. He can draw, he can use color, he can design tattoos and invitations. It's just not one thing. And by seeing a bunch of them together within one frame, you sort of maybe see connections or common denominators between the items. I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, here's an example of, on the outside, you see this curlicue bit. And I didn't know, I haven't looked at this up close for a long while, so it took me a while to figure out, is that trying to be the curlicue of this coat of arms? No, it turns out that that was part of a map I was making. Yes, this is a map. It goes from the Cambridge Antique Market here up 20 from Route 28 to 93 to 495 to 112, and you're at the market. So all of this curlicue stuff represents the highways going north of Boston. Okay, only the smart people would get there, but those are the customers I want anyway, the smart ones. This one was a flag I was designing for a friend whose name was Wendy Moran. And so here's the sketch I had, one of the sketches I had for it. And here's the finished piece, MWM. And what I meant with this design is you leave Boston and you're in traffic for probably 3 hours, stop and go to her Cape house. And you're gnashing your teeth, you're gritting your teeth, but as you leave the angular city life, you slightly start to curve, you slightly start to relax. And then, so here's a simple curve here going up, and then this complex curve, meaning it goes this way and then turns and goes that way. So it's more curvy, and it finally ends off with as soon as you get your gin and tonic or your mint julep or your glass of white wine and look at the sunset. Do you see the sunset there? You're looking north. You don't really see the sunset, but you see the waves crashing. So that was there. So that was one thing I did. Another collage I made, the frame was part of the collage. It was a found object. It was a tea tray or a cordial tray where you'd, put your teapot and your glasses and your Royal Doulton silverware, plates and sugar bowl and all that shit. You put that on the tray and you bring it out to the coffee table in the living room, and Hyacinth would pour you your special concoction of tea. But this was an octagonal frame, as you can see, so I collaged a lot of drawings I did that had stop signs in them. Okay, why don't you stay here? Zooming in, there's a stop sign. Here's a stop sign in under our bridge with the shadow covering half of it. There's a stop sign in the corner here. Stop sign there. There's also a do not enter sign, but that is the stop sign. That's the same stop sign, except from a different angle. These two are the same stop sign. So that was that one. Other times I might take 3 or 4 or 5 objects, or drawings, all on a theme, and I'll put them together. And these are paint swatches, where I took the name of the color. This was white glove, and I drew a white glove. This was poodle pink, so I drew this sort of doodly poodle. This was dove white, so here's the dove of peace with the olive branch and the bird, and then it's been run over by a car. So that's the tire tracks. This was part of my Autobahn series, not Autobahn like the naturalist, the Autobahn like the highway they have in Germany, the Autobahn series, which showed dead birds squished by tire tracks. This was called God-given. Why they called this color God-given, I don't know. But God-given it is. So here's what does God give you? A lightning bolt from a cloudy sky zapping you for your sin, whatever the sin was. Rosy cheeks. Oh, this is a butt. This is a human butt. Sunburned. Whoever this was wearing fishnet stockings, and there's a nice pattern of buttage, of shadowage on that. The last one is inviting gesture. So what's more inviting than that symbol? I know this isn't made for children. Frames, I quite often find frames being thrown out on the side of the road or in our building. We have people that, might have had this frame or had some desire of framing all of the grandkids in pictures like this. And they realize that they don't like their grandkids any more than I do. So screw that. And we'll just, Peer will use it for something. So I use this frame to as a frame for 8 pictures of my alcoholic history. So single glasses are the vertical ones. The horizontal ones are the bottles seen in a bar. Now I could have framed each of these individually, this big, like I did with this one. But that means I have 8 frames to find or buy, and I need to then you only see one at a time. I like the fact that you can sort of see, bing, bang, bong, bong, bang, bang, bing, bing. There's a little temporal melody that happens in your head. Other times, a frame like this that you would use to show your 5 grandkids or your 5 cats or your 5, which of the 5 deadly sins you're dealing with today. And I just put together 5 different ways I've drawn a glass of beer. Okay. Other times, we had a construction destruction show here in the gallery where I was on a kick of drawing the construction sites around our neighborhood, which seem never ending, but at this particular time they were happening everywhere, not just one that never ends, followed by another one that never ends. This said like 5 never-ending things. So there was no difficulty in finding excavators excavating and bulldozers dozing and jackhammers hammer. Here's another thing I did for that show where I drew the same scene, the barricade with the red screening, so you couldn't peek in to see all of the lunch hours that were being taken by all of the workers, which is why it took 3 years to do the building instead of 1. And this was, again, a display put up within one frame, again, to show that I can draw things in different ways, different styles. Now, each one of these things could have been individually framed, but just do all of it at once. This is me at my dentist. I drew the lamp looking down at me on paper. I drew it with my iPad, which you can't quite see there. Here's one of my dentists. There's the other two I had. I go to a dentist school. So you see your main dentist person who's a student. That was him. And then you see another student that, what was his name? Shoot. Roderick. This was Roderick. That's Roderick's girlfriend, whose name I can't remember, but she came in briefly for one part of a thing. And then this is Demetrius, who took over for Roderick. And so my technicians are here. The view looking up is there. Here's the view looking up while they're doing things to me. Now I wasn't drawing this while they were yanking my tooth out, but I remembered their purple gloves and the pick and the mirror and all the other stuff. And then I imagined what their view was looking at me. And I animated these things. They always had difficulty with my tongue because it was getting in the way all the time. So this one, it shows my tongue going everywhere as they're trying to do what they have to do. They finally gave me this tongue suppressor thing. I don't know how to describe what it looks like, but it's this big plastic thing they shove in your mouth that squishes your tongue out of the way and exposing all of the teeth to their tools. So this is what I started yesterday, and I will go back to this in a second, but I also want to show you this. Here's another collage I did describing fountain pens. So there's a Schaefer Senior Lifetime in the frame, under glass. If you wanted this, you'd have to get a hammer and break the glass. But I specifically used this one in this piece of art because it had a cracked cap. The cap also didn't screw on. The threads were all gone. The barrel also had some flaw in it. I forget what. And the nib was missing its iridium. But you don't see that looking at it. Even a pen expert wouldn't know that those flaws were there. They might have an inkling about the iridium being gone, but I don't know. So what did I do around this star? All of the supporting actors are around it. So I went through my house and I found letters people wrote to me. I found a score card that Peer Dad Todd, my brother, my father, and I playing Scrabble or something. Here's a check that I wrote to the condo trust for $413. It's gone up since then. Shopping list, and I find these tablets. I never would buy such a thing, but someone was throwing it out, and I decided, well, I'll make up my own shopping list. So Dom Perignon champagne, oysters, honey, figs, almonds, chocolate, and lube. You can do the math. I'm imagining Schubert's score of Haydn Roslein. Sah ein Knab ein Roslein, Roslein auf der Heide, war so jung. Here's 3 drawings of the Statue of Liberty. Here I found an old book on how to do penmanship, and you're supposed to copy the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, So I wrote it in swishy stuff here, and then the teacher grades it A plus, show off. I had fun with this one. Here's uh, I have lots of old diaries, so and they're empty, so I'm not destroying historical documents here. Sunday, December 7th. What does it say? Peaceful morning, but for the something of something something. For the something something something. I don't know what I wrote there. Here's just some regular figuring. Here's a diary from 1912, Wednesday, August 14th, day 4. That damn Molly Brown talked my ear off at dinner. Can't wait to dock at New York and be done with that tiresome woman. I found a picture of Cary Grant, and I forged his signature there with a big fat pen. The architect drawing their creation on a napkin is included. This is a fun one. It was a letter sent, and for some reason it was never. I think the envelopes and the pre-stamped postage that they used to do was in a box of stuff I bought, never mailed out or sent, and I added the penny postage that I had kicking around the house. And who did I send it to? The Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Who did he send it to? He sent it to Oliver Smoot. Now, do you know who Smoot was? Well, this is your job to look that up. Look up Smoot, MIT, Smoot, and you'll hear all about it. You'll read all about it. So now we're going back to, we're going to go to here, this one. So this double mat and all these doodles are being put together right now in real time to show off all these doodles that I used to do. So now we'll show you how I'm working on that. Lights. Turn this off, put that down. So lift this up a little bit. So in my house, I have a collection of frames. And every once in a while, in my building, I have people that work for museums, and they have to quite often reframe things and remap them. So they bring to the building the mats that they can't use again. They're upgrading and using better materials that are more less acidic and things like that. So I see lots of frames and lots of mats in in our free area, but rarely do they fit. So what do I do? Well, I'll show you what I do. I take the mat. In the case of the one I'm working on now, it's a double mat. So it looked like this. No, it looked like this. White was on the outside, and then there was a little bit of gray on the inside. But the mat was a little bit smaller than the frame by 2 inches in one direction and an inch in the other direction, or something like that. Maybe an inch and a half an inch difference smaller. So I just cut the mat in 4 pieces. Cut, 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 cut. Then I arranged them in the frame, and then I glued a piece of paper between, or across the back side of the mat. So you didn't see how they're attached, but they're held together in this particular fashion. Again, except it was a double mat like this. So then, let's just go to a new page and I'll draw sort of what you're seeing here. Do I have... So here's going to be the frame and the piece of glass I put elsewhere. But here's the mat, the double mat. I'm going to show the inner mat as being darker than the outer. Well, it is actually. So that's what it looked like. So looking through the glass now, the front side, I have to disguise this. So what I do is I take one of my drawings, one of these drawings, and I will place it here. And then I'll take this and I'll cut that off. So that's now the edge. Oh my God, it just destroyed a beautiful work of art, didn't I? I sure did. And then sometimes what I do, again, here's our mat. Sometimes I will stick so things are in front of the gap there, completely in front. Other times I'll have things coming out above the inner mat and below the upper mat. So it's sort of three-dimensional. You've got this level, you have this level, and you have the bottom level. So there's, this much difference in space between the two. So going back to my finished piece, or the piece that's almost finished, I'll just show you more logic of how I'm doing this. So turn this off again briefly. So I wasn't sure how this was going to work exactly. The different colors, the different, was I going to have it be dark in the middle or colorful in the middle and dull on the outside, and it gets more colorful as you go in? I wasn't sure if that was going to work. What I did do is the center, this piece, these 5 pieces in the center are on pearlescent paper. So they're slightly reflective, where all of the stuff on the outside of it is matte paper. So as you see this framed in the hall, and you're walking down the hall and you see it, there should be sort of a glow that you see in the center. So what I need to do now is finish it. And there's pieces I have to put here to cover up the background there and here. And I have to, hopefully I can, the glue that's holding the mat down to the back paper is way back here, so I can slide things under the gray mat and above this. And I might just show a little corner of paper with maybe just this much of a drawing coming out of it. And then I'm going to add, I will find bits of this shiny paper with little corners, and I'll have them sort of come out of some of these areas too. And then I'll take a couple of areas of brightly colored paper and maybe tuck them in like this. Again, to make it look like this, it's just this huge clusterfuck of randomness. where you just end up seeing how much fun I can have with a piece of paper. Now, I made hundreds of these things. I discovered when I opened a drawer and found hundreds of these things. And I started doing them when I got interested or re-interested in pens that have a very, very fine line nib with just a slight little bit of flex to it. And I thought, they're just so much fun. I really can't do much with them, but I can doodle with them. So I started doodling. And here's one. I don't know what this is supposed to be. Maybe this is in an alternate universe. This is what the comets look like as they go past the Art Deco universe. Some of these things are vaguely letter-like. This might have started off to be some sort of P. I also made hundreds of these that are just the letter P. And they're framed similar to what I showed you, except they're vertical. They're all arranged, they're not overlapping crooked, they're all vertical. And it's in our public restroom in our building, and it's the title of the piece is Taking a Pee, which is what presumably people are doing there. But they were really fun to do. They're just I sat down, listened to a radio drama on YouTube or something, and I came up with these crazy things. What the hell is happening here, I wonder? Anyway, so rather than keeping these in a drawer or trying to sell them for $10 a piece, I did sell a couple of these at Open Studios for $10 each. But I thought, I'm just going to use up one frame that I'm afraid I'm going to step on and break the glass of. One frame. And the frame is about 100 years old. As I took out the mat, there was a bunch of newspapers that were used to sort of add weight to or thickness to the mat, and they were all 100 years old. One frame, one mat, double mat, and 75 drawings. And I put it all together into one big picture. And that'll be with me until I die. No one's going to want to buy that either. But it's what I'm doing today. I'm going to finish this job today. I probably will, at some point, just sit and make a bunch of really small little doodlements that will be roughly this size, that I can have peeking out of larger pieces or overlapping maybe part of a larger piece, just to break it up a little bit. The center of that piece is a little too boring, and even though it's this paper that's shiny, your eye might go to that first just because it's sort of reflective. I want to break that up with some little bits that will be not shiny. Now, the question is, am I able to recapture the inspiration when I was doing these things? I might fail And I can hear you saying things like, well, what do you mean recapture? You just doodled. Anyone can do that. Well, yes, anyone can. But there was a certain kind of doodling happening when I was doing this. A certain part of my life that I was struggling with, maybe. There was a certain part of, I don't know, what was happening around me. My father dying, or who knows what was going on in my life when I was making these. And I think part of what I was doing here was escaping from having to do actual real art. I don't know. I don't know whether I can certainly, I'm not making real art now either. I mean, I do have jobs that I have to finish for people. And one has been on my desk for almost a year. I got the job at the Philadelphia Pen Show a year ago, and I'm still not done with it. And part of that job is I was imitating. The client saw a drawing I had done as a business card for someone who was a doctor, medical doctor, and it showed a doctor's bag, the kind that, I don't know whether doctors actually have bags anymore, but it used to contain a little black handle, but this big, and it would hold their stethoscope, their nitroglycerin tap ampules, or whatever they're called, the stethoscope, a syringe, whatever they carry with them on a house call. And inside of it are, pens. And it had an inkwell over here, and then had a one pen down below with the business card or the name of the doctor that hired me. So the actual information that a business card was to have was just this big, but it was big enough to read. The whole thing was a business card. So it was 1/10 of the business card was the actual information, the phone number and the name of the collector, the pen collector, who was also a doctor. Anyway, a doctor saw this on my website and said he wanted to buy a copy of it. I said, sure, I'll print one up. Well, I couldn't find the original thing. And again, it had someone else's name on it. And I said, well, I'll just redraw for you. And tell me your favorite pens. And I've got this much of it done. I have to add these pens. I have to add that. I have to add the inkwell. I'm not doing the business card for him. I'm having his initials on the label of the ink. And do you think I can get myself to finish that? It's sort of, and I think the stumbling block for me is I'm copying something I've already done, which I never really like doing. And so I think that's the main thing is the joy of discovery is missing. So I'm hoping I can recreate just for 10 little drawings that are going to be about this size. I hope I can recreate what I was doing here so I can finish that piece. Well, no one came to visit me today. I guess my mojo has gone. Anyway, be good. Bye.